Hello, my badass boys and badass babes. It's your favorite bad girl of the Black Hills, Virgo the Vixen. And as always, hit your likes, subscribe buttons down below or wherever they're at. First of all, happy Easter to all those who just celebrated it. And as for me, I love Easter, even though the bunny and I may have some difficulty or just say some issues because I know the truth about the little guy. But that's besides the point. Easter is a fun time. Now, for the record, what did I do for Easter? Now, I'm going to tell you a little Easter story. Now, I was invited over to my daughter's house, Ava, the Spanish Chihuahua. She invited me over to her house for Easter dinner. She also invited her sister, Leona. But after, to be fair, Leona's been going through a little bit of a rough patch. After her, let's just say, breakup with her fiance because of an incident that happened at the beginning of the year, they just didn't patch it out, and so he left her. She's heartbroken, and she's going off the deep end. And this weekend, she decided to have a girls' weekend in Vegas. You heard me. She decided to go to Vegas for Easter. And she was going to go, as she said, hopping down the bunny trail looking for her velveteen rabbit. I could only assume what that means, but I'll let you decide. Anyway, so I get dressed, I go over to Ava's house, and you know what? It's smelling really good. But I wasn't worried about the smell. I was worried about my grandkids, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, the triplets. All right, and I love this. But when I got into the house, it looked more like, how can we say this, a minimum security prison versus a home. There were baby gates everywhere. In the kitchen, the living room, hallway. There was a gate at every bedroom door, bathroom door. It's like, oh my God, what the hell? Am I in Alcatraz or something? And my daughter looks over and says these nice little words. Mom, your grandkids are learning to crawl now. Okay, good point. I just gotta say, for parenting skills today are way different versus what I was raised with and what I had. Because to be fair, I'm surprised Ava turned out as good as she did with my lack of parenting skills. Because my parenting skills is pretty simple. You tell the child not to do something, and if they did it, well, that's their own fault. Hey, my kid was smart. She only learned some kids got hit 2 or 3 times with their own cabinet door. It only took my daughter once, so I gotta say, my daughter's ahead of the curve. So here I am maneuvering around the baby gates, and I finally get to my grandkids because they're in basically a corral inside the living room. So I pick them up, and I put them on the couch, and I just love them because they're so adorable. They're giving me some weird smirks and stuff, and so I pull out their little gifts. Now, it was a rabbit similar to this. I each give them a little bunny rabbit, and then I face them. I start playing with the bunny rabbit. I start moving the bunny rabbit around. And then I tell the kids the unofficial story of Easter. All right? The unofficial story is, and this is what I told my kids. Kids, this is the unofficial story of Easter. It is the day when the big JC rose from the dead, got together with his posse or apostles, depending on which story you hear. And they hunted down the Easter Bunny because the Easter Bunny ratted out the big JC. All right? Everyone knows snitches get ditches when they rat on the big JC. So what happened was they found the Easter Bunny, they killed him, and they fed him to the lepers as a way of saying, here you go, happy Easter, whatever. I've risen, here, have a free meal. And needless to say, the magical rabbit cured them all. That's the unofficial version. And when my daughter hears that, she starts yelling at me going, Mom, don't tell them that. I go, it's true, kids. Don't worry. Don't worry. Grandma's got a lot more things to tell you. All right. And so I could tell by the looks on their faces, they were giggling. They could tell they were happy. They were entertained. I was moving with Bunny, telling them the story. So I let them play around. And I go, well, what's the harm in me telling that? She goes, they might actually start believing it. Okay, there could be an element of problem there, but I'll worry about that problem when it crosses that bridge. But point is, and I love my grandkids. All right. So, I go into the kitchen, and lo and behold, There is the other grandmother, Susan. Now, for the record, Susan is my son-in-law's mother, and she, again, is the perfect grandmother. All right. There were 3 baskets. It said Michael, Gabriel, Raphael. It had toys. It had candy. And I look over at Susan, and I said, Susan, you know the kids can't eat candy. And she goes, well, golly gee, I know that, but I just had to get it for them because I love them so much. Like I said, she's the perfect grandmother. She's the type that has baked, she makes her own baked goods. I have baked goods from a local bakery. All right. She's the type of grandmother, basically, who will say the right loving things when something bad happens. I will say something that will teach you a lesson not to do it again. All right. If you're sick, she actually has home remedies that will actually cure you or make you feel better. How do I put this? When I was sick, my grandmother gave me a shot of vodka. And needless to say, when I woke up, I was feeling better. All right? I don't know what it is, but it worked. Okay? So you have to understand something about my grandmother. She came from the old world. She didn't like most of my cousins. She did like me and one other or 2 others. Here's the thing, though. She didn't speak the American language. She understood the American language. She could read and write in it. She just didn't speak it. All right? To her, the American language was beneath her. Okay, keep that in mind that this is the same woman who believes that the American language is beneath her. Is the same woman who believes you need to have a shot of alcohol while baking. And the shot of alcohol is used before you start baking. Just keep that in mind, all right? That's the kind of woman she was. But I have Susan over here. She is, the smell of what she's making. She is making this holiday ham. And again, I don't understand why we use ham on the day when the King of Jews is resurrected. All right, but whatever. She has this fixins, and it is amazing. It smells good. And it's making me jealous of this woman. Because, first of all, this woman doesn't curse. She doesn't swear. I mean, she doesn't have a negative thought in her head. So she welcomes me. She gives me a hug. And she says bygones are bygones because there may have been a little incident, excuse me, when the children were born. But needless to say, we worked out the details. Everything's kosher now. So we're sitting at the table. There's me. Right beside me is going to be my son-in-law. Right beside him is going to be my daughter. And then between my daughter and me is Susan. So I'm right next to Susan. All right. And the meal was going good. I got to tell you, I've never had anything like it. She's like a master chef, and I didn't even know it. Then she starts asking me questions and saying things. And it's starting to aggravate me because my daughter told some lies. All right. And I taught my daughter, first of all, how to lie better. Second rule I taught her. First, if you're going to lie, make sure your lie is believable. Second, if you're going to lie, tell mommy so this way we can get our story straight. She forgot rule 2. Okay? Because Susan wanted to know what I did for a living. So when she asked my daughter said, I work with Greenpeace. You heard me. My daughter said, I work with Greenpeace, which is probably a better answer than what I would say at the moment, but she was caught on the fly, to be fair, and she said Greenpeace. And I could tell that look on her face because of what happened next, that she came up with this lie on the fly. She goes, oh, I hear you work for Greenpeace. That's why you're always gone so much. And I go, well, let me put it this way. If you consider having sex with overweight fat men for a living, I guess, technically they are whales, so yeah, I am saving the whales. So yeah, there's a way you could say I am working with Greenpeace. Oh my God, the room went dead silent at that point. My daughter has this look on her face like, oh shit, I forgot to tell mom that little lie. It's like, hey, you know the rules. You don't tell mommy things, that's on you. And Susan, her mouth is just this long, it is dropped. And she goes, golly gee, you have sex with men for money? And I tell her, not all the time. One time I got a minivan out of it. And all of a sudden, from my side over here, I hear this, Mom, shut up. Hey, And I look at my daughter and go, hey, that was a good minivan. All right, it got you and your sister to wherever you need to go. So don't knock it. And I look over and I whisper kind of, mockingly, it's like, you don't want to know how I paid for the upkeep. And all of a sudden I hear Ava going, Mom! All right. So a couple awkward minutes of silence pass by. We continue to eat dinner. Susan is now fascinated by what I do for a living. Okay? So for some odd reason, it just can't calculate in her head that I sleep with men for money. And this is what she says to me next. She goes, are you going to do this for the rest of your life? And I look over at her, and with the straightest, honest face I can muster, I go, I am thinking about giving up. It is getting to be more of a rougher life. I was thinking about becoming a contract killer on the weekends. I hear you can get $50,000 a pop, so I can just do the occasional job, and you know what? I'm good to go. My daughter could have killed me with a knife in her hand. How do I know she could have killed me? Just because of the rage in her eyes. Now, my son-in-law is almost peeing himself because he's laughing so hard. He finds this whole scenario funny. All right? He is laughing. And then my daughter starts cursing at him in our family's native tongue. Now, to be fair, in our family, we don't use our native tongue but most of the time it's in times of pleasure or in times of great anger. And she was going off. And why do I call her the Spanish Chihuahua? First of all, her father was Spanish. Second of all, when she gets mad, she sounds like a little Chihuahua. And here she is just barking up a storm in my family's native tongue. All right. So poor Susan doesn't know what to do because she honestly thinks I'm going to become a hit person, here in a couple months. And oh my God, my own daughter kicks me out of the kitchen saying, go play with your grandchildren. All right. So what do? I go out, I look at the grandkids. The grandkids are just, they're sitting on the couch and I'm playing with the bunny again. I'm bouncing back and forth and I'm starting to, have a frowny face and I'm just depressed because my daughter just yelled at me in front of the perfect grandmother. And I'm looking at my grandkids and I'm starting to speak in the native tongue of my grandmother. And all of a sudden, as I'm crying, almost to tears, crying and complaining and yelling, my little grandkids, okay, they were all smirking at me. All three of them were smirking at me. And then it just dawned on me. That's the same smirk I gave my grandmother when she used to yell at me. So it gave me some hope that, hey, they're going to be all right. Susan won't corrupt them too badly. Or maybe, I don't know. All I know is my grandkids are in safe and good hands. Now, how did this night end? And don't worry, it did not end with the police force showing up, the fire department showing up, or the ambulance showing up. Okay, to be fair, it ended pretty quietly except for one little thing. All right, so after the meal's done, dessert is served. Again, Susan makes the best desserts, all right? And so Susan and I were talking as we're cleaning up the kitchen. I'm finding out stuff about her. She's finding out stuff about me. And to find out, we actually have a lot in common. For example, she lost her husband a couple years ago to cancer, which I feel sorry for her. And I told her, I lost my husband many years ago when he accidentally fell on a knife several times. And hey, don't judge me. I was acquitted of those charges. All right? That was one thing we had in common. Another thing is we like to bake. She likes to do some baking. I like to buy people's baked goods. So, we got some similarities there. All right, she's pure and honest. So am I. Or at least that's what I told her. Stop laughing. You know the truth. Don't need to rub it in. All right. So, we're having this really good conversation. My son-in-law is still crying of what happened. He is still being berated by my daughter. So here's how the night ended officially. My son-in-law had to sleep on the couch. Me and Susan have exchanged numbers, and we're going for coffee next week. And my daughter may not invite me over for another Easter dinner anytime soon. Needless to say, the vixen actually, in my defense, I didn't do too much. My daughter should have warned me more, so I guess tonight's moral of the story is, or life lesson, or thing to take from it is, if you're going to lie about your mother's occupation, make sure you tell her about it first, so this way you get your guys' story straight. Well, anyways, my badass boys and badass babes, hopefully you enjoyed my little tale about my Easter, how can we say, experience, or dinner, or whatever you want to call it. Who was your vixen, and bye-bye.